Paella has been around most likely since the early 1800s, but I feel like every culture has a beautiful rice dish that's filled with things like chicken and sausages and all different types of seafood. So in this recipe for a paella made straight from the sea pantry with tinned seafood, we're gonna make a traditional Spanish paella, but with some ingredients that you can keep on hand. Now we're going to start off with some saffron, and what you may not know is that saffron is actually individually picked. So out of the purple crocus flower, these individual stamens are actually picked, making it one of the most expensive spices in the world. We're going to put it into some warm water, and it's just going to steep for about 15 minutes. You can see how it already starts to make the water this beautiful yellow color. Now let's go over to the stove, because I've started to prepare some things and steeped some of that in advance so that we can have something that's really bright and flavorful before we begin. What I want to do is start to get a pan hot. Most of us don't have a paella pan, so it's okay to use a large cast iron skillet, or if you wanted to, just a regular skillet. And then I've also got some basic seafood that I could keep on hand in the freezer if I wanted, but I felt like maybe in this one I would put a little bit of fresh seafood in here. So I have some wild halibut, I have some pink shrimp, none of which has been cooked yet. And then I also have a little bit of sausage, which is also traditional in a Spanish paella. So here's what we have to do. We're going to take a Spanish olive oil and we're going to put it into our heated pan. And then we're going to individually cook this seafood, because what I like to do is get the seafood done first, and then that way, after the paella is cooking and the rice is ready, then it's okay because I'm not overcooking the seafood. Sometimes seafood can get overdone. So we'll just put this into our pan, and we'll allow this to cook. Now in the meantime, we also have to get some other ingredients ready. Those other ingredients are going to be things like chopping onion. We also want to have, in addition to our chopped onion, some chopped garlic. You can hear that starting to sizzle away. I'm also going to season this with a little bit of salt and pepper. And all I really want to do with this is just get a little sear on it, because it'll finish cooking in the pan. So a little bit of seasoning. It's just a little bit of sea salt and some fresh ground pepper. In the meantime, I've also gotten some smoked paprika. Now, I love to use this in all different types of dishes. It gives a little bit of smokiness, a little bit of spice, but in this, it's definitely something that's delicious and necessary because it gives us a real layer of flavor. So now, just looking at this seafood, and you know, I hear it always, how do I know if this is done? Well, most of the time, when the pan's not hot enough, fish and seafood will stick. So what you want to make sure that you do is get the pan nice and hot. Notice that I've got a single layer with my seafood all the way around it without having a lot of space in between, but just enough so that it doesn't steam, meaning that the juices come out. And then, just as it starts to get done, I'm going to turn it over. Now in the meantime, I've also started to heat up some stock, because I'm going to need some fish stock to be able to cook the paella rice with. So we're just going to turn this once. You can see we've got that olive oil going. We don't need to get a lot of color on this, and it's going to cook relatively quickly. And we'll just let that finish up. Do you see how when that shrimp starts to curl, it's basically done? Now in the meantime, I've also got some fish stock. Nice and hot. The heat of it is going to actually help cook the rice. And then I have some Spanish paella rice as well. So let me just get this out of the pan. And as I said to you before, it doesn't take very long, nor does it have to be all the way cooked through. The shrimp is the thing that's really going to cook the fastest. You can see how it starts to curl up. And then take a look at our little pieces of halibut. And remember that if they're sticking, it's because the pan isn't hot enough. So we want to make sure that we have a pan that's hot. And then in the meantime, I'm just going to throw in this little bit of sausage just to get it browned. You can see that it doesn't take very much. It doesn't take much olive oil, nor does it take much time. And then we'll pull these pieces of halibut out. And then we're going to take out our sausage. Sausage is already cooked. And we'll get that little bit of fondant in the pan, which is that great caramelization. And then we'll get the sausages out of there as well. And what I like to do with this is just cover it with some parchment paper and just let it sit and rest. So we'll get that parchment paper over the top. And now I'm going to put a little bit more oil in the pan, and I'm going to add a little bit of garlic and just start to get that browned. And our smoked paprika. Now you can also add other ingredients to this if you want to do some onion or some pepper, but we want to get that just starting, as you can see. And then I'm going to add my arborio rice. And this rice, this beautiful paella rice, very simple to put together, along with some crushed tomatoes that we're just using just to cover it, and our warm stock. We're just going to give this a little stir and then turn the heat down. Add in that beautiful saffron broth that had already been steeping. And then this is going to cook for about 10 to 12 minutes. Now, here's what we're going to do. I've got one that's already done. We're gonna move it over here. We've got our seafood, and the thing about the seafood is you just add in a little bit of layers of that cooked seafood. I usually take a piece of parchment and allow it just to sit for about another 10 minutes before I'm ready to serve it. And look at how beautiful this has turned out. The rice gets nice and fluffy. You've got all of those lovely flavors with the bits and pieces of the onion and of course all of our saffron. And then what I want to do with this is really make it a little bit of a tinned seafood. So I've got some sea bass, and I thought what I would do is just tuck the sea bass into our paella. And this is going to just give it a little bit of a richness because it is packed in Spanish olive oil. I also have some mackerel, and I love the mackerel that is the Spanish tinned mackerel that is already soaking. You can see it's soaking in this beautiful paprika oil. So let's put some of our mackerel in here. And again, just the richness of all of this seafood going into this to add flavor. It doesn't smell overly fishy, so it's not something that is going to add too much flavor, but it definitely adds a richness to the paella. And then the last thing that I like to do is I like to be able to take a little bit of parsley, brighten it up, and put it over the top. Now, traditionally, you'll see these also served with Spanish peppers, these delicious little peppers, and also a little bit of Spanish hot sauce. So now get the bowls ready because this paella is ready to go straight to the table. A tinned seafood paella straight from your sea pantry. Dig right in.